Welcome to the eye of the European storm.
This is Greece, formerly associated with carefree fun in the sun. But more recently, the skies have darkened, and we are now being told that this place is threatening to bring down with it the whole of the European continent. I'm here to tell you why things may not be as simple as they seem.
Nearly 3,000 years ago, a Greek slave called Aesop told the famous parable of the ant who saved for the winter months and the grasshopper who did not.
His fable of the industrious, frugal ant and of the lazy, frivolous grasshopper is at the heart of today's debate concerning the euro crisis. The Germans are cast as the ants, the Greeks as the spendthrift grasshoppers. But in my judgment, this is far too simplistic. Grasshoppers in every Eurozone country and beyond cause this crisis. But now it's the ants in Germany and in Greece that are paying for it.
Unfortunately, their sacrifice is being wasted in unworkable bailout deals like the one agreed to in Brussels today. But if we get our fable right, I think the euro crisis can be solved easily. Athens is a city bristling with people struggling against the odds. While riots and politicians make the headlines, Greeks are carrying on with their lives, trying to get by. Depression is in the air, on the streets, in the graffiti that covers the walls. But in typical Greek fashion, it's mixed with defiance. Shops are closing every day, and the ones that are hanging on have no customers. No one can afford anything.
Τώρα δύσκολο. Πάρα πολύ δύσκολο, παρόλο που δουλεύουμε πάρα πολύ και περισσότερο, αλλά τα πράγματα ναι, δεν αγοράζουν όπως παλιά, γίνουν δύσκολο.
Prices are high despite the recession, and it's not as if matters were better before the crisis.
When the euro came in, the price of basic goods skyrocketed. Meanwhile, there was a massive reduction in interest rates and a fall in the price of luxury goods. This meant that the rich had a bonanza, but the poor struggled more than ever.
Anthula has worked for years in my university department, cleaning the offices of colleagues who have been ministers, heads of banks, powerful people. Her monthly salary of 850 euros is now 600 and falling. And the bills keep piling up. Her father has Alzheimer's and she has to pay for his care. Last year her mother died.
Εκεί είχα τραγικό πρόβλημα. Τραγικό όμως πρόβλημα. Αφού συνονοήσε με το γραφείο κηδιών και πάλι βρήκα τρόπο με το κεφάλι κάτω, αλλά έπρεπε να το αντιμετωπίσω. Τι θα έκανα. Εργάζομαι στο πανεπιστήμιο με οικονομολόγους, με μεγάλα κεφάλια, ένα από αυτά είσαι και εσύ. Βρείτε τη λύση. Δηλαδή κάντε κάτι, δηλαδή δεν είναι μόνο τα βιβλία.
The lights are literally going out in our cities. Families have to live without electricity. There are more homeless on the streets and suicides are on the rise. Christos Kavathas is in a different boat. He returned to Greece after working for financial giants like Goldman Sachs on Wall Street. He built this magnificent house on exquisite ancient ruins. He says recessions are like a natural phenomenon.
People here seem to be unwilling to accept, their fate. That this is part of life.
Christos is a conundrum. He says he believes the rich must pay more tax and feels sorry for the overburdened poor. But he also thinks they have choices.
The ones that choose to work for 300 euros a month for the rest of their lives, they'll probably be always poor. It's human nature. You can't. The strong will do well. The not so strong will not do well.
2,000 people used to work in the LFC's shipyards. Now, after 1,300 of them were laid off, the remaining workers strive to maintain pride in their thinning work. Christos Kanagidis and Dimitris Zourmas have between them worked here for 61 years. I asked them how bad things had got.
Πάρα πολύ χάλια. Δεν πληρωνόμαστε όπως πληρωνόμαστε. Γιατί πληρωνόμαστε με έναντι.
Εδώ και 6 μήνες.
Εδώ και 6 μήνες δεν έχετε
πληρωθεί. Εδώ και 6 μήνες Μας χρωστάει η εταιρεία.
What do they think about being portrayed as Europe's grasshoppers?
Λοιπόν, καταρχήν είναι προσβλητικό αυτό. Δεν ανεχόμαστε τέτοιου είδους χαρακτηρισμούς. Το ότι προσπαθούν να μας κάνουν τζιτζικές, αλλά εμείς έχουμε αρκετές αντοχές, θα επιβιώσουμε και θα τους αποδείξουμε ότι είμαστε τα μυρμήγκια.
The Greek people are angry and they are disillusioned. They don't trust the media, they don't trust economists, and they certainly don't trust politicians. But above all else, they are sick and tired of being portrayed as Europe's villains.
I came to Frankfurt, the financial capital of Europe's paymaster, Germany, where the prevailing mood is that Greece is to blame. Before the euro arrived, German reunification was paid for by squeezing German wages savagely. As wages fell, profits built up in these banks.
Meanwhile, on the other side of the Atlantic, Wall Street was pumping out rivers of private money. When these merged with German profits, they flooded countries like Ireland, Spain, and of course Greece, in search of even more money. Thus, great big bubbles were formed, netting Europe's grasshoppers fortunes. When these burst in 2008, the banks were in deep, deep trouble.
Ever since, the ants of Europe have been paying through their nose to keep propping them up. Germans with bailout loans, Greeks with 1,000 cuts. German people are also disillusioned. I met Clemens, who works for a taxpayers association, and Jesse, an unemployed car mechanic.
Warum hat das Land überhaupt die Schulden und bei wem hat es die Schulden überhaupt? Ja? Also, wen helfen wir? Helfen wir den Leuten, den Menschen da unten? Ja? Oder helfen wir den Banken? Ja?
Was mich persönlich aufregt, ist, dass als Griechenland Mitglied wurde in diesem europäischen Währungseinheit.
They're telling me
German banks are central to the euro crisis. So I spoke to one of their chief economists who wants Greece out.
Yes, we have two countries in the Eurozone that are not able to keep members of the Eurozone. The Greeks and the Portuguese should go out of the Eurozone.
What about countries like Spain, Italy, even France?
If those countries are not able to fulfill and to deliver, it will be difficult to keep the Eurozone alive.
It is clear, at least to me, that the catastrophic disintegration of the Eurozone is in progress. But is there an alternative?
I think there is. We can end this crisis in 3 steps. First, we need to unify Europe's banking sector and recapitalize its banks forcefully. Secondly, centralize a large part of the Eurozone's public debt via the European Central Bank. And thirdly, use the European Investment Bank to shift idle savings into productive investments in the countries that need it the most.
It is a simple idea, but to stand a chance, we must ditch caricatures and national stereotypes. We must abandon the idea of nations of lazy grasshoppers and nations of industrious ants.
Perhaps the crucial moral to my story is that to understand the euro crisis, we must remember that there is no such thing as the Greeks or the Germans. Mine is only a story, but so is a dominant one, which foolishly misinterprets Aesop's famous fable, pitting one proud European nation against another.